back to this final video in my spring frame quilt playlist. I'm on a bit of a deadline because I've got family coming to stay for Easter and I'm trying to get this quilt finished, but I think I might do it. I ended up using actually 4 machines to finish it off because, well, you're not seeing double, but that is my Egyptian Lotus electrified singer machine, vintage singer machine. I actually started on that one with this part of the quilt, and it started playing up a little bit. The thread kept snapping. I couldn't work out why it was doing it, so I put it away and moved on to my Husqvarna to get a bit more done. And then also in the video you'll see me doing a little bit of the quilting on this treadle machine as well. So I hope you enjoy watching. So this is how far I've got, and I've managed to hang up the quilt. It's a bit of a temporary lash up, so it's enabled me to have a better look at it. This is the book that inspired me, and I've tried to get as dramatic an effect by turning the work 90 degrees and putting in stripes like this maker has done. So I'm going to make some patchwork sections for the next step of the quilt, or final step of the quilt, and then I'll put them at an angle like they've done in this one here. Now that I've hung it up, I can see that it is beneficial to be able to step back from the quilt because those diamonds, those apricot and green diamonds in the middle, some of them stand out too much. And had I hung this quilt up sooner, I'd have spotted that and moved them around. It's too late now. But I am pleased we've been able to use up so many of these small scraps. I've also stuck to my rule of not having any pink in this quilt apart from a tiny bit in that print there. It's basically spring colours, greens and yellows. So I'm just giving it a quick press, and it's been quite nice to have a reasonably tidy sewing room and a put down version of the huge dash of fabric I had. I have now got lots to choose from, which is a good thing. So I'm just cutting out some more squares to make my half square triangles here.
were some of the rows joined up, my squares aren't all the same size, so I sewed them together, each row, so that one side is straight, one side of the row is straight, and then I trim off the other side. Once I'd finished joining that block of patchwork, I took the plunge and cut it in half, and then attached half to each side of the existing quilt. Now I'm marking out a triangle. Here I am marking out the other triangle, and the symmetry that I'd worked hard to achieve in the block of patchwork, suddenly I realised that that was going to give me a problem, because my plan was to fit these four cut off sections together to make the other triangles for the other sides. But you'll see in a moment that that was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. You can see that where the triangles fit together, they'll have the same square on either side of the join. So I used some of my spare blocks to insert between there and then cut them down to size. I quite enjoy solving this kind of problem when I'm sewing quilts. It wouldn't be for everybody. Some people like to plan it out, but I actually find it quite therapeutic and relaxing.
I'm determined to finish this quilt, and I've looked through what white I've got left and it's not nice enough to put in this quilt. I've also decided to keep it small. So my options are to use this yellow to edge it with, the small amount of white linen nook cotton that I've got, which I think might do it.
Said at the beginning that I was using 3 machines to finish this quilt. It's actually 4. I sewed together some old wool blankets that I had and decided that that would be the back for the quilt. And I overlocked the 2, sandwiched them together with the overlocker before I bound the quilt.
I've managed to edge the quilt in the overlocker. It was a bit awkward because I've got these different fabrics on the back. That's a fleece, but most of the back is old wool blankets that I'm repurposing. So it's a bit of an unusual quilt because I'm not going to be having batting in the middle and a layer of cotton on the back. I'm just going to have it like this, I've decided. And I'm going to, I've pinned down where the edge binding it, where not edge binding, the edge sashing is. And that's the final frame. So you've got the orangey brown one in the middle, then white, then orangey brown, then white. So I'm going to just sew to hold this in place now and anchor it round. I'm going to do that on my vintage Singer, my treadle Singer. Now, if you've watched my other videos, this first made an appearance at my allotment because I briefly kept it there, but it was too damp for it there, and so we brought it back last year, and I've used it a few times down there. But now that I've reorganised my sewing room, I've actually got room for it up here. At the moment, it's just next to my other sewing machines. Now this one over here, my other vintage Singer, that is same decals. It's the same Egyptian lotus theme. That is electric, and I started making this quilt on it, but about halfway through it started playing up, so I switched to my Husqvarna. But I'm going to try and finish certainly any quilting I'm going to do, I'm going to try and finish it on here today. And so this will be the first time that I've used this machine up here, which is quite exciting. So I hope you enjoy watching. I've nearly finished. I've got the edge quilting done. I've still got a raw edge here. Well, it's just an overlocked edge, but I've managed to hang it up. I need to find a better way of doing that, but I have actually managed to hang it up after a fashion. So I've got one more step to do, which is to bind it, which I'm hoping to do in the next day or so. I've run out of time today. We're switching between machines. I never ever sit down at this machine without thinking, oh, I don't need to switch it on. It's quite strange. Just start using it. It's like magic. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I'm quite pleased that I've now finished the sewing part, the machine sewing part. I've managed to stitch my binding all the way round, so I'll just be folding it under now like this on the wrong side and hand stitching it down, and then the quilt will be finished.